I think I should say first that I use the term incel very loosely here, because, there's sort of an implication that not only am I powerless to change my situation, but also that I'm owed something in some way. And, I just want to make it clear that, whatever the issue is, it's most definitely something going on with me. And, I don't think I'm powerless to change my situation. Like, I don't want to come off like I'm blaming others for my issues. I most definitely don't feel that way. I'm not like a forum member. I don't feel like I'm hopeless. The only reason I'm using that word is because, that's kind of the word that's being used to describe sort of my situation, And I also want to say that, like, the lack of sex in my life is probably not what the real issue is. I mean, I almost never even think about that, actually. Like, I'm not going around saying things like, crap, still haven't done it yet. I think it's probably just a symptom of a broader issue, something subconscious probably. I'll get more into this later. But, yeah, I'm an incel. Never been in a romantic relationship, never been in a sexual relationship. Honestly, I've never even, like, hugged or held hands with a girl. KHHV. I'm 31 years old. I'm so uncomfortable with this topic that even saying the word, like, sex and sexual feels kind of like my mouth is like fighting against me as the words come out, like I'm cursing in front of my parents or something. I get the sense that mentally healthy people probably don't feel this way. Something just feels like it remains undeveloped in my head. Like if you ever played Age of Empires 2, and you were playing the computer opponent on the very easy setting, and they just never get past the feudal age, and you could just go in and like wipe them out. That's me. I'm stuck in the feudal age. I feel like something possibly just went awry with my development. I used to think people were like acting when they would say things like, "Yo, baby." Like to impress their buddies or something. Because I've literally never had the inclination to do something like that. Like honk at a girl while driving by or whatever. But the older I got, the more I started to think, maybe they're not acting. And, maybe something different is going on with me. Seriously, I mean, I've never even, liked a girl. Like, people always say things like, "Oh, I like her," or "I like her." But I never knew what that meant. I've thought things like, well, maybe I'm asexual. But I don't think that's true either, because, I mean, it's not like I'm completely devoid of, desire. Feels off to say that out loud. I think I'm quite possibly what they call a mental cell. Like some sort of mental block that won't let me advance into the castle age. I feel like possibly my self-esteem is, so low that I've subconsciously ruled out the possibility of ever, getting a girlfriend or whatever. Yeah, that's never going to happen for you. Don't even concern yourself. And, I also don't discount the possibility that maybe everyone else is just as terrified as I am. But, I just, lack courage. Because, I do sort of have, a terrified fascination with relationships and sex. On the one hand, I'm too afraid to even look. Like, going to the edge of a skyscraper and looking down. But on the other hand, I kind of want to see what everyone's talking about. This theme of being terrified by something and fascinated with it at the same time is a repeating pattern in my life that I will get into later. But also, maybe I am right to be so cautious. Maybe my instincts are in the right place. Maybe this whole sex business just isn't for me, and I can sense it subconsciously. Maybe it's like the obesity epidemic. More and more people just becoming sexless, being guided by forces they couldn't possibly understand. Something like that. I mean, I wonder how common this condition is. Maybe that's just the way it is now. Maybe incels are just the norm now, and nobody ever talks about it. Because, how would you know if nobody ever said anything? Yeah, I've even wondered if sex is even real, or some elaborate lie. I mean, who knows at this point? When I was 12, I started gaining a little weight around my midsection, which, that's not really considered abnormal by most people. But either way, I just really remember just absolutely hating my body. And I mean seriously hating my body. I was totally disgusted by what I looked like. I remember one time in middle school, they were doing checks for scoliosis, and you had to take off your shirt for them to check you. And it was just right out in front of everybody, and I didn't want to take off my shirt. They had to take me around the back so nobody could see. I was the only person they did this to. I don't even remember whether or not they took off my shirt. I don't think they did. The whole thing was just embarrassing. I did actually turn out to have scoliosis, by the way. More on that later. I was just so uncomfortable in my own body. I would constantly tug at my shirt to try to create wrinkles. So hide my fat outline. But people would think, oh, it's just the ripples in the shirt. It's not his fat stomach. I still feel this way. I don't ever take my shirt off. I'm like Kevin Smith. I'm what they call skinny fat, and I'm a wristlet. My wrist circumference never really bothered me though. Just the fat stomach. I've lost a lot of fat since I was 12. I'm actually the closest I've ever been to my ideal body. More on that later. When I was 13, I lost all of my friends due to various circumstances. Some moved away abruptly. Some started hanging out with the wrong crowd. Some just kind of drifted away. The thing is though, sometime around this age is when I just started staying inside all the time. Since I didn't have any friends, I didn't really have anything to do, so I just stayed in my room and screwed around on the computer and, playing Dreamcast. This was back in the year 2000, so you can imagine how slow the internet was back then, if you're old enough to remember dial-up. I feel like a mentally healthy person might have attempted to make friends again, but something changed for me at that age. And something changes for everyone around that age. Like 13 or whatever. But I feel like whatever went wrong probably went wrong at about this age. My parents also divorced right around this time too, and we had to move out of our home. I feel like 13 and 14 is when you start differentiating yourself as a person. You begin to detach yourself from your parents and your home. Your friends sort of become your family, and your actual family starts drifting off into the background. This never happened with me. I never left my parents' house, because I never really had friends past the age of 14. I was just inside all the time drinking soda and playing video games. I wasn't out doing what I should have been doing, which I assume was going to drunken parties and making out with girls and stuff. There was one time when I was about 14, I went over to a friend's house. I still knew him well enough to just kind of show up, but it was a surprise to him when I got there. I hadn't really seen him in a while. He was the drug friend. I went there because I wanted to smoke weed. I'd never done it before, but for some reason, out of the blue one day, I just wanted to try it, and I knew if I went there, he would definitely have it. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. When I first smoked it, I didn't really feel anything, but then 5 or 10 minutes passed, and then I felt my heart beating faster, and it was just uncomfortable to me. And from there, it just turned into a 2-hour panic attack. I think I have a real issue with letting go. I mean, in retrospect, it's just kind of funny. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, "How do I make this stop?" The panic wore off eventually, and honestly, after a while, I started to enjoy it, but it was a long, long time before I ever tried it again. And after smoking it, my anxieties just got way worse. I remember one time in school, someone had a pen that they told me to sniff the tip of the pen, and I did, and somehow or another, I got the idea in my head that there was weed in the pen. I honestly have no idea how I got that idea in my head. I kind of remember that the table I was sitting at, everybody was sniffing the pen, and maybe they were all in on the joke or something, because I sort of remember that everybody around me was saying that there was weed in the pen. Maybe they somehow sensed that I was terrified of being high, like some sort of sixth sense. Maybe I'm just imagining that somebody said that there was weed in there, and it was all just a psychotic delusion. Either way, I thought I was about to be high again like the first time I smoked weed, and so I had a panic attack, and I had to go to the guidance counselor to calm down. After that, I started being afraid that everybody was trying to slip me LSD. I started never eating or drinking anything over anybody else's house. I didn't take anything that was a pill, not even aspirin, because I was so afraid of that feeling of being high. This further drove me into just hanging out at home all the time. I was so terrified of people my own age that, they were going to trick me in some way, or embarrass me, or do something horrible to me, or try to slip me drugs. So I just stayed in my room all the time, playing video games. It even got to the point that I was afraid that my mom was trying to slip me LSD. If anything even remotely hinted at drugs, it was instantly a panic attack. If I had a thought that seemed a little bit off, how you have weird little thoughts as you're drifting off to sleep? Sometimes you have those thoughts when you're daydreaming during the day and you snap back into reality. It was instant panic attack when things like that happen. I would think what was that? Is this the beginning of an LSD trip? It was that bad. Needless to say, this kind of insanity I don't think is conducive to proper development. I never differentiated myself. I was just so scared of everything. Even if I had friends, I wouldn't have been able to go out with them. When I was 15, even a flicker of a thought of getting drunk or whatever, or doing something remotely dangerous was absolutely terrifying to me, because I was just so afraid of losing control. And I just assumed that being drunk was going to be just as terrifying as the weed experience. This theme of being afraid of losing control continued well into my adult life, and still has continued, but to a much lesser extent. We'll get into that later. I mean, for about 10 years, I was periodically going through what I called anxiety periods. These were 3-month periods where I was just anxious as soon as I woke up, and I couldn't stop thinking about something horrible happening to me. Early on, like I said before, it was mostly just being afraid that somebody was trying to slip me drugs or something, and I was about to start hallucinating. I would become agoraphobic for months. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't be alone in the house. I had to have my mom there with me. Believe me, I know how that sounds. After time, though, the fear started to morph. One time, for about 3 months, I was afraid that I was just going to throw up. This happened when I was about 21. This one just kind of came out of nowhere, actually. I watched this video on, I think it was Ebaums World. There was some guy doing a TV show where he drank syrup of Ipecac and threw up a couple seconds later. It was some prank show or something. Those were popular back in those days. Maybe I'll link the video in the description if I can find it. Yeah, but just for some reason after seeing that video, I couldn't stop being afraid that I was about to throw up. And when I say being afraid, I don't mean I'm a little anxious. I mean, this was an all-consuming obsessive thing. I would have 20 panic attacks in a day thinking I was about to throw up, bargaining with my brain brainstem. I was physically exhausted. I became agoraphobic. I was certain that any second now, I was about to throw up, and it was going to be horrible. There was another time, about 5 years ago actually, where I convinced myself that I have an aortic aneurysm because I have a few what are called marfanoid body traits, like scoliosis, long arms, hypermobility. More on that later, actually. I went to the hospital, I think 13 times demanding that they look at my aorta because I was convinced I was seconds away from dying. At one point, I think I was awake for like 3 days in a non-stop panic attack, and I actually even ended up in the psychiatric ward. They didn't keep me though because I wasn't suicidal, so I was only like in the initial area for like a few hours. I think I might actually make a whole video about this at some point because that whole thing was probably the worst experience of my life, and it probably warrants its own video, so I might make that in the future. I actually don't have Marfan syndrome. My aorta is fine. They actually did a check at one point just to be sure. Marfan syndrome's rare anyway, and it's especially rare if you don't have a parent that has it, and neither of my parents have it. I've also been absolutely convinced at one point or another that I had pancreatic cancer, brain cancer, colon cancer, oral cancer, oropharyngeal cancer, bone cancer, testicular cancer, melanoma, leukemia, lymphoma, salivary gland cancer, ALS, MS, lupus, scleroderma, acoustic neuroma, cholesteatoma, leukoplakia, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 4, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 3, mitral valve prolapse, aortic regurgitation, brain aneurysm, kidney failure, type 2 diabetes, and a lot more that I can't even remember right now. So yeah, I'm pretty much a lunatic. I mean, I'm much less of a lunatic than I used to be, since I'm not like paranoid that my mom's trying to slip me LSD anymore. But I mean, I'm still pretty bad. But I'm not like in non-stop anxiety worrying like I used to be. I think I probably have something like social anxiety too, because I just have bad problems with communication. Like I just can't do social interaction. It's sometimes like I can't even hear what the other person is saying over the intensity of interacting with another person. I'm bracing so hard because I know I'm going to say something awkward, and I'm just going to be thinking about it for years, and it's going to cause me like literal physical pain to think about. And so, every time I interact with someone, that's how high the stakes are. You mess up here, you're going to be thinking about this and cringing for years, decades. And so I just avoid it for the most part. I can't deal with that stress. I'm always spilling spaghetti. Like just recently, actually, I've been going to the supermarket every day for a few months at the same time every morning, and I basically get the same thing every day. Package of ground beef. More on that later. And I see the same butcher there every day. And I've been saying hi to him more and more. But just recently I started thinking things like, what if he doesn't want to say hi to me? Or like, why are we both just pretending to like each other? What if he doesn't want to be supermarket friends with me? The saying hi to each other is so stupid. Why are we doing it? There's no reason to be saying hi to each other. What are we, 8-year-olds on a play date? And I'm afraid he's thinking things like, I didn't sign up for this when I started here as a butcher. God, I don't want to say hi to this guy every day. Ugh, am I going to have to say hi to him every day now? And so, I deliberately go out of my way to not say hi to him. Just to, let him know that I'm not getting too close so he doesn't have to say hi to me every day. But that only compounds the problem, because now I don't know when I should say hi to him. And now every time I look at the guy and he sees me and he remembers that I ignored him, and now he doesn't know what to make of what's going on. And I just assume like, well, he obviously hates me now. And so, I just end up creating the exact situation that I was afraid was going to happen to begin with. Seriously, I dread going to the supermarket now because I don't want to see the guy. I've ruined our relationship, and now further interaction with him is going to be horrible and awkward and painful. And now I'm even thinking about just switching supermarkets because of this. Every time I see the guy as I'm walking toward the meat section, I'm thinking like, please just go in the back room. Please just go in the back room. And, I pretend I can't see him, even if he's standing right next to me. I'll deliberately go to the other side of the store and then come back to see if he left before I get my ground beef. I just can't deal with it. And, maybe everyone is like this to some degree, but I feel like I must be it to the highest degree possible. I really don't even look at people. I'm afraid to look at people. I don't want them to think that I'm staring, so I just look straight ahead. Maybe everybody does that. I have this horrible thing that I do where I assume the absolute worst thing when someone's saying something and there's even a millimeter of room for interpretation, because I always just assume that everyone hates me, and so my brain will just make them say something that they didn't. It always feels like people are coming down on me or putting me in my place or something, but I know that can't be true, because why would people do that? It's like I have this subconscious narrative in my head that people are just always looking down on me or something, and so my brain will twist reality just enough to make it so that I perceive everybody doing exactly that, even when they aren't. But part of me wonders if maybe I'm right. I think my main objection connection in the whole supermarket butcher thing is the fact that I think I'm not being true to myself. Like, the thought is, why are we saying hi if we don't even know each other? Why are we pretending? And sometimes I feel like maybe it's just the fact that I'm so uncomfortable with, like, pretending that I can't bring myself to do it. Or, that could just be some self-aggrandizing nonsense that I'm telling myself. It probably is. What's strange is that I don't feel like I'm hopeless socially. I mean, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I don't think I'm that bad at speaking, like articulating my thoughts. I think, maybe I'm even above average in that respect. But, it just feels like I'm missing something crucial. And I do really feel like it's some sort of like subconscious self-hatred thing where I'm not even aware of it. Where, my brain just won't even let me begin to think that like a relationship or friends are even possible for me. Or, maybe everybody experiences the world in this way. And, like I said before, maybe I just lack the courage to push through it. I sometimes feel like I'm living in an apartment that's floating in space. Like, I'll look out the window at night sometime and I won't be able to see anything outside. Just blackness. And I could sort of imagine in my head that my apartment's just like a building floating in space with nothing around it. Because, I just have kind of ended up at a point where I might as well just be floating in space. Seriously, I think I have the most boring life in the universe. I don't ever do anything. All I ever do is watch YouTube videos. Maybe everybody does that now. I don't know. I mean, I'm just basically in my room all the time. I'm so bored. I want to do something exciting. I listen to Queens of the Stone Age sometimes. I always get this image of like being in the back seat of a best friend's car. And, like we're getting high for the first time, driving down a desert road, and you just sort of like sink into the back seat and look up into the sky, and there's this like skull with a snake tongue coming out of it, and like smoke coming out of its mouth, and it's just sort of making this hissing sound, and this is like the first time you were ever away from your parents, and you have this like nervous excitement. Maybe I'm being overly romantic. I just have this longing to do something dangerous and rebellious. I've never gotten to let out my bad side, because I've always been just so scared all the time, but I've always secretly wanted to, I think. I mean, I'm probably too old for that now. I mean, I'm like in my 30s or whatever. I sometimes wonder if I died when I was 13, and this is just some like weird Bruce Willis afterlife or something. I have this other thing I do where I'm like embarrassed about the things that I like because I feel like I'm going to be judged harshly for it. Like if I picked a shirt out on my own, like I just have this fear in the back of my head that someone, specifically like an immediate family member, is going to say something like, "You're seriously wearing that?" This probably isn't an uncommon fear, but I feel like I must react to it more strongly or something. I mean, I see people with like bumper stickers of their favorite bands and stuff, and I think to myself, like, how are you doing that? I think this would also probably apply to a girlfriend. Like, I just feel so embarrassed. Like, it feels so out of character for me or something. And I feel like my parents or my brother would think something like, oh, what does he have, a girlfriend now? Or, just some humiliating thing that would make me want to crawl into a spider hole forever. And I know how ridiculous all that sounds. My parents are lovely people. They would never try to humiliate me for something like that. Maybe some friendly ball busting about it, but it would never be like ill-intended. I should say though, my life isn't all bad. So I'm not like sitting here doing nothing. I do run an eBay business, and I make about what I would make working a minimum wage job. So that's cool. I go for a 2-mile jog every day through like steep hill. I do the carnivore diet, which if you didn't know, that just means I only eat like meat, it's implied by the name, I think. I've been doing that for about 6 months now, actually. I also do NoFap. My longest streak with that is like a month. But yeah, I've been kind of slacking on that lately. And so, I have like a relapse like 4 times a month now. But, I think that's still pretty good. It definitely makes a difference in how I feel. Like, I know this is in the realm of like pseudoscience and all that. But, just my personal experience of it, it makes everything sort of feel like more vibrant, like nostalgia about when you were a kid, but that's just the reality that you live in now. It probably is a placebo effect, but I don't think it's completely placebo because it makes my body odor smell like fresh water and cat spray. So, I try to take care of myself. I've lost quite a bit of extra fat since I started doing the carnivore diet. And yeah, I'm actually starting to get like visible ab muscles for the first time in my life. And so, that's pretty amazing. I never thought I'd see the day. I record music. I have like 6 albums worth of music that I have on Bandcamp that I've been making since like 2005 or so. I mean, you can listen to a song, over here somewhere. I mean, you may or may not like it. I don't know. Buy the album from the Bandcamp page. I think I can cook pretty well. Yeah, I can make a pretty awesome medium rare steak at this point because it's basically all I eat. But, even before I was doing this diet, I was learning how to do all sorts of crazy dishes like whole wheat pasta with pesto and chicken, spaghetti squash and homemade sauce with, locatelli pecorino romano cheese. I actually even learned how to make like fresh pasta with like eggs and flour. That was pretty fun. I quit smoking 2 years ago. I read this book called Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking. And I guess, like brainwash brainwashed me into not wanting to smoke anymore, because it was seriously like the easiest thing ever. Like, I didn't struggle at all to quit. I stopped smoking in May of 2016. So, it's been like 2.5 years. I used to have a mildly successful YouTube channel called Hey Major 7. I deleted it though. I only had like 500 subscribers, but I had a lot of regulars on my channel, and it was actually growing before I just deleted it out of self-hatred. I still have videos up if you want to see them. I'll link it somewhere in the description. So yeah, I mean, it's not all bad. I made a list of things that deeply terrify me. The list includes 1, going on a date with a girl, 2, smoking weed, 3, showing my dad my music, which, I don't know why, but I've just always been way too embarrassed to show my dad my music. Like, I just feel like if he didn't like it, it would discourage me a lot, My dad actually had a heart attack about 2 years ago, and the first thing I said to myself was, I'm going to show my dad all my music. That was the first thought I had, that it would be a shame if he died and he never got to hear my music. That's got to mean something to me if it's the first thing I thought when he had a heart attack. So I think this is probably pretty important to me. 4, sex itself. 5, cancer. 6, losing control of myself. Actually, there's a lot more, I think, probably. Maybe I'll do a whole video on that. But, I think more than anything, I just want to conquer my fears. I want to be brave. I want to be Link. Like, I know that's corny and stupid, but I always just wanted to be Link from Legend of Zelda. Like, when I first played Ocarina of Time, when it first came out in 1998, something about that game just seriously resonated with me. And that game came out right when I was about 13, too. That's kind of the age that I feel trapped at. So I guess I just have to become adult Link. But I mean, really, more than anything, my life is just so boring. I mean, it's not even about sex or whatever. I'm just so bored. I could go on and on about how I'm an insane person. But I think I should stop the video here. And, thank you for sitting through all of that if you did. I really appreciate it. I don't know exactly what this channel's going to be yet. I do have a couple ideas, though. And, maybe if you have an idea, you can suggest videos for me to do. I'm totally open to suggestions. But, that's it for now.